Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we should be uh, streaming now. Like, uh, I've, today is Wednesday, January 19th. What I realized is that my network was allowing a lot of other people to use a secure DNS to get around the secure DNS I had already set up for my router. Um, And so there's no way to like tunnel secure DNS, which is now just on by default in Chrome. And basically, it is allowing well, without being 100% going to Google, it's allowing a lot of things to go through Google's DNS server so that they could still get general statistics of people compared to going to a smaller, more privacy focused secure DNS thing. Secure DNS effectively is mostly DNS over HTTP, but it might also be using, depending on its implementation, DNS over TLS, but basically encrypting the very first connection you have to a website. So people in the middle cannot see that you're going to, hey, let's just use Pornhub as an example. With regular DNS, if you go to Pornhub, you would be first connecting to like Google's DNS service, which then would be able to go, wow, we see a lot of people are going to Pornhub, or we know specifically that this IP address is going to Pornhub, and that's called the DNS leak. Effectively, because you're leaking out information to the DNS server, who should be an unaware service or a trusted service, and frankly, Google shouldn't be that trusted. The problem, though, is that they've updated Chrome, which means also Microsoft Edge, and Firefox, I believe, also has secure DNS enabled in general. And it may not go directly always to Google servers. It might also go to Cloudflare or some of the four biggest servers, but it's certainly taking control away from the person running your local area network. Um, and because it's encrypted without high level equipment to either block or de-encrypt it, which you can be done if you have high level equipment, but a little home network router can't do that. Uh, like it, you basically just have to block it, and so there's a long list of like the major DNS servers that you just have to straight up and say, block this, don't let this through. That doesn't mean you can't go to google.com because you're blocking DNS, Google's DNS. It just means you couldn't go to dns.google, which is not a site you would actually ever go to, uh, and almost certainly has nothing there. That being said, I may have some network problems. I noticed that the Chrome on my main computer tried had some trouble. Like what's on steam.com apparently is having trouble, which I think is separate, in which their HTTPS secure site is broken, or never existed in the first place, and it was just being automatically converted back into an HTTP site. But OBS also had to be reset because all of a sudden that all of a sudden it wasn't able to connect to the server either, which that's the weird one, certainly, because that almost implies that there would be a Microsoft thing going on here, just in Windows in general, as far as secure DNS Windows 10, and I don't believe that's the case. But I'm sure nobody really cares about any of that, and that was a waste of 4 minutes. So let's move on. Now, right now I should be really playing Yu-Gi-Oh! The new Yu-Gi-Oh! Game instead of this. But at the moment I just don't have the energy and time to make a stream that is going to be a special stream where I just look at that. In fact, I may immediately after this stream pre-record a video where I look at the new Yu-Gi-Oh game and do a spotlight on it, and then maybe by Friday we'll be playing the Yu-Gi-Oh game. Which, unless the new Yu-Gi-Oh game just is out of the box, it costs money or ridiculous, that makes it very possible that I would just not even bother to get the remainder of these rewards, or go any further down the route of Shadowverse, which is fine. I think anybody who's been watching my channel knows I've been fairly burned out on this game, and it's just not giving the daily rewards or the win ratio that would be interesting. Plus their move towards kind of censoring things and moving towards being more kid friendly has lost a lot of interest on the visuals. The visuals were kind of interesting with like the anime style, but they never really went too extreme with it. Plus you have fairly inconsistent art styles where it feels like there's at least 3 different art styles. I would probably make a special effort to finish the solo story, but that's like actually doing some spotlights to just finish all of the solo story, I think would be fine, but that would be the place to wrap up and be done with Shadowverse. But I bet people don't even care about that right now, because the big news is Microsoft has agreed to acquire Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion, I believe. Just shy of 69. And then everybody has been talking about it so much that frankly I am even tired about hearing about it and hearing the massive speculation. This is almost the danger. Swordcraft or Portalcraft unranked is what we'll do, and let's just replace this ranked matches so we can just kind of stay in the unranked realm. Swordcraft or Dragoncraft, not solo, multiplayer, unranked. Yeah, we haven't even, it's been probably 2 or 3 weeks and I haven't even bothered to rebuild the decks. So if you need any more indication, yeah, so Microsoft is going to acquire Activision Blizzard. It's going to take a while. Technically, what has actually been said versus what has been speculated is in over the course of less than 48 hours has spread apart, and the gap is widening and likely to widen further. What is officially said is that Bobby Kotick will be under, I believe, Major Nelson, and then everybody else who is on the board, all the CEOs, all the, well, not, there's only one CEO, Bobby Kotick, all the managers, all of them would also be under Bobby Kotick still. So basically nothing would change. That's what has been said. What has been speculated is that no, Bobby Kotick is out. How many of the yes men that are on the board and management are also going to be out? Nobody has said anything about that. But if you were to take previous actions to as an example, as a predictor of future behavior, previous behavior as a predictor of future behavior, which is about all a human can ever do, none of the other companies that have been acquired by Microsoft have seen major shakeups in their leadership. that we really have not seen anybody leave from Bethesda, the Bethesda ZeniMax thing, and there's a really good argument that unless the Bethesda ZeniMax is not a completely closed deal, there would have been a really good argument to get rid of most of the people who worked at ZeniMax. They're not really that needed. There would have been an argument to get rid of the main guy in charge at Double Fine, even though he is kind of a big name and not really a problem. There is definitely a point here where Microsoft is becoming too much like Google, in which they are effectively having fairly highly skilled people that are getting pushed down further and further because the ladder of infrastructure at Microsoft is just getting longer and longer and longer. A senior programmer at a company that just had like a producer above them and maybe the board above them now has that same senior programmer now has his producer, the board of their company above them, then the guy in charge of Microsoft above them, then the board of Microsoft above them. So you've just like gone down 2 ranks as far as where you're on the executive ladder, which maybe doesn't really matter to a lot of people. But it probably would eventually just lead to a realization that there's a lot of corporate bloat. What they're not saying, and maybe it's because they don't want to get into some kind of weird lawsuit where this deal falls through and then Microsoft is accused of like tanking the deal or hurting the value of the company of Activision Blizzard. They're not saying that there's going to be sweeping changes. They're not saying that they're going to go through a fine-tooth comb and fire all the people that are problems, because it's not just Bobby Kotick. Bobby Kotick was allowing a culture of a lot of bad people, bad managers, to exist. Those managers aren't just going to automatically straighten up and fly right and no longer be problems. Even if they did act a little bit better and act like they were on probation for a year or two, they're eventually going to just fall back to their old bad behavior, because once you're down that route, like you really can't save them. That's why I'm such a big fan of just the fast firings instead of giving people a second chance. Like a lot of times you can give people second chances for mistakes that they didn't mean to do, but when you're intentionally acting in a toxic behavior, sexually harassing people, just being a jerk, those are conscious decisions, and those conscious decisions, once you cross that line, will be crossed again. In Bar Rescue, it's the equivalent of, if you watch the Bar Rescue show, I love that show, but if an employee is overpouring because they don't know how to count at the right speed and they're putting too much alcohol in their drink, that's fine, you can train them again. But if an employee has in the past proven that they know how to count and that they are totally capable of not overpouring and putting too much alcohol in the cocktail, and then all of a sudden they start doing it when they think the boss isn't looking, that's not acceptable, because that's like, you've seen evidence there that they knew they were overpouring. Why would it, just to explain, why would someone overpour as a bartender? Because if you overpour a strong drink, you get bigger tips, and the tips go directly in your pocket, whereas you're now costing the bar more alcohol than they had budgeted for, So over the course of one bottle, you might be costing $30 to $60, taking $30 to $60 out of the pocket of the bar, out of the budget of the bar, and you have to use that $30 to $60 to in part buy alcohol and restock the alcohol, and they're doing that over the course of the bottle to maybe get more, but maybe get less tips in their pocket. And that's effectively the way bartenders steal when John Taffer, the main guy of Bar Rescue, talks about bartenders being thieves. Very rarely is it the case that a bartender steals by just going up to the cash register and taking money out of it, or just stealing a bottle off the back bar. So yeah, that's an odd analogy to make, but there is no reason to be this hyped, and the past 48 hours have really just gone and shown the video game industry and the video game news industry was desperate to report on anything at all since the new year started. So much so that they are now just salivating and vomiting over articles out just to talk about this. What is less being said directly, and I think I can be a lot more harsher on this than most, is Microsoft, and particularly Bill Gates, I'm fairly sure, unless I'm just misremembering, always hated unions. And this really is union busting at a major corporate level. Because by Microsoft choosing to buy Activision Blizzard in its current state, they are hoping very much, at least some people in Microsoft absolutely are hoping very much, that this kills any momentum for unionization, and thus they will be back to a situation where all of the power stays in the hands of corporations. This is like union busting on a universal scale, in which an entire corporation has just acquired, an entire business has acquired another business to stop it from being unionized. There is a specific case of union busting that happened just a few years ago between Microsoft and some QA employees, although technically it was between a hiring company that Microsoft uses, a temp agency, which that has been the long-running way of disenfranchising workers, is to not ever have them be actual employees of that company, but instead working temp jobs for a temp agency. Thus they can never unionize, thus they never get benefits. Temp agencies are effectively a scam and probably should be illegal. But they are the old school Uber concept, in which you have people act as employees, but you call them independent contractors and then don't give them benefits, and don't let them ever have any chance of success. But yeah, I can't help but see that this isn't an active attempt at union busting. Now, in fairness, companies are always in talks, and so the rumors are definitely that the top talk of acquisitions for Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard happened over a year ago, before most of these controversies came to light, but definitely not before most of these controversies had happened. So Bobby Kotick would have known what was going on, and that it was just all the negative press that lowered kind of the valuation of Activision Blizzard to make it a really good deal. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that that like $20 billion of Sony's valuation just disappeared overnight. Of course, it will bounce back with this announcement. So Microsoft has 3 very weird reasons in which this acquisition has benefited them. In that it has hurt Sony, it has busted a union, and it has expanded in the more straightforward, obvious way their lineup of games they own. But arguably what should have happened is nobody should have touched Activision Blizzard with a 10-foot pole. It should have gone bankrupt, which maybe it just never really would have done that. And maybe at a certain point, this is where the concept of a corporate execution needs to actually exist. If corporations are people, Activision Blizzard is the prime example of a person that should get the death sentence and be broken up in bankruptcy. Because really all Microsoft benefits from directly as a corporation is getting the Activision Blizzard games lineups, which also includes old Sierra games like Leisure Suit Larry and King's Quest. So we might potentially see them hand the Sierra games over to Double Fine, and then we get old point-and-click adventure or text-based parsing games remade for a new generation. Which that would make a lot of sense. They probably will get rid of Battle.net, which is great. I suspect that means we'll eventually see everything that was on Battle.net eventually move over to other services, launchers, and even Steam. Which is nice. I imagine we'll eventually, just because of Game Pass, see re-releases of like StarCraft and Warcraft instead of just World of Warcraft. This is really probably the first big foray of Microsoft moving into an MMO sphere that I can think of, so that's a new kind of field in which they could get some recurring revenue, assuming people want to come back to those platforms. Like, personally, do I want to go back to Hearthstone? I kind of would like to, particularly if they then acquired Ben Brode's Second Dinner company and kind of merged those back together, or if Ben Brode all of a sudden was working for Microsoft. But I don't know if those employees who have been leaving, the good employees of Activision Blizzard, they've fled ship, and I don't know if we're gonna see all of them come back. I don't know if this really all of a sudden is going to fix the like pro-Chinese propaganda sentiment that was rampant as far as kowtowing to Chinese communist propaganda, just so that they can have their League of Legends stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft maintains that same attitude and just tries to keep it quiet. Nobody's been particularly irate about that. If anything, I guess most people are now more aware of like the concentration camps happening and focusing on that a little bit more, while forgetting about the fact that Singapore is still increasingly becoming a totalitarian communist dictatorship like mainland China, and any promises or appearance that they'd allow Hong Kong to, not Singapore, Hong Kong, any promises that they'd allow Hong Kong to maintain its more free society have been completely broken at this point. So yeah, unless you basically have to have somebody come out and say free Hong Kong or something similar to that and see a completely different response from a then owned by Microsoft Activision Blizzard to really even begin to start to think about wanting to go back to that. Otherwise, the controversy still exists there. In fact, the controversies are just way more increased now. Like, it would be fairly insane to go back to playing Hearthstone, really, or playing any of these games. The only people that are still playing Activision Blizzard games clearly either do not care about all the controversies, whether it's mistreatment of their own employees or just pro-China for blatant capitalistic reasons and greedy reasons, or any other random other controversy. I mean, you could just go to the Wikipedia article of Activision Blizzard and look at all those controversies. Unless all of those feel like they've been changed, it is insane to potentially want to go back to Hearthstone. And I think that's the same feeling that Ben Brode at Second Dinner probably is still going to have, is that, like, you don't quit a job and then come back a couple years later and go, well, there's a new manager in town, so everything's different. Not after years and years of working there, not after years of building up that frustration and such. Like, I would never go back to work at one of my old jobs that I did not like when I was working there. Like, no amount of promises is going to tell me that this changed and that it's all of a sudden a whole different environment. Even if every single employee is different, it's probably not changed the way business is done by that much. And you're going to bring up, those bad memories are going to happen. It would be like me going back to high school. Like, even if the high school was completely different, like, if you went back to your high school a decade later, there would be very little the same. There might be some teachers that are the same. Not a decade, let's say 100 years later. Just guarantee that there's not going to be a teacher that's the same or a student that's the same in that high school. The building, the feeling of being there still would affect you. It would feel, any negative feelings you have would still boil up in your memory. Any positive feelings, well, would have. To use a different high school example also, it doesn't even really matter that in high school you may have 4 years of students and then they graduate out. There is consistent allowing, there are bullies in the teachers, and those attitudes and behaviors get passed on to students year after year. A senior student may bully the freshman students, and then it just gets passed from, once that freshman becomes a senior, they bully in the same way. You see that in like hazing at colleges and such. It's like, oh yeah, the senior frat boy bullies and hazes people exactly the same way they were hazed and bullied. Like, it's very easy for things to just be passed down from generation to generation. And particularly in high school example, a older senior student may have a younger brother that joins that high school 6-7 years later, and so then the older brother just tells the younger brother or bullies the younger brother in the same way. So behaviors and patterns happen the same way. There is just a kind of passed on memory of how things are done. And I'm using bullying as an example because that's exactly what I imagine Activision Blizzard is most like for the bad managers, is that that's why the better way to really fix something like this would have been a full bankruptcy, full dissolvement of the company. Microsoft just needs the assets, frankly, and then they could evaluate one by one who they want to hire and who they don't want to hire. What you don't expect to see here, it would be really crazy to expect that all of a sudden you're going to have them make every single employee re-interview for their job, which probably should be what happens, and then heavily investigate each person as to whether there was any complaints on there. We do know that Bobby Kotick has been secretly firing people, letting people go or letting people quit, and that about 20 people have been fired. So maybe he cleaned up house before? Like, you could kind of hope that that's the case. I don't know if there's a lot of faith that that's where what's going to happen. But yeah, that's not a terrible action. Like, if he did actually clean house and get rid of the 20 most toxic people, it doesn't quite solve the problem because you still have the victims, and the victims of bullying in the workplace are often so traumatized that they too really shouldn't be kept around. And again, that's why really it should have just been a liquidation. It would be best from this perspective, in my opinion, if the acquisition went through and they did fire 90% of all the employees. Like, make them all re-interview for the jobs. Really make it seem like they are clean house. But I also would argue that Microsoft is trying to make themselves look like good guy Microsoft, and that's not true, and not something people really should believe, and no corporation really is going to be a good guy ever. And the stated desire and need to make money is counter any claim of being morally good, because you can't really be morally good if you're not willing to sacrifice your own profits.
So tired of just standing around. I've been desecrated.
So yeah, I would also think that Microsoft should have closed down some of the other companies, and they haven't done that. There really is no reason for ZeniMax to exist. Keep Bethesda, get rid of everybody at ZeniMax, or almost everybody at ZeniMax. I don't know if there's really a lot of reason to keep Double Fine as its own separate thing instead of kind of merging these teams or moving people around. Like, a restructuring really should start to happen at some point. Okay. Can I do anything at all? I can do this.
In my right hand, might in my left.
And I can do this.
I do believe we have a case.
And then
2 blades in one go.
we can do that.
I'll see you in purgatory.
That
You
was a
smell
mistake.
suspicious.
So tired of just standing around. I've been
That's mine.
desecrated. I've been
Yeah, he's just healing
desecrated.
himself up. And yeah, he's gonna win. So yeah, that's about as much as I want to talk about Activision Blizzard. I personally am going to try and mostly stay tuned out as far as the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. It's going to be almost a year until it's fully acquired. There is some talk that Bobby Kotick isn't going to get as much of a golden parachute as he might have, because of a change of leadership clause, and this technically not being a change of leadership and instead being an acquisition. But he's still going to get, I think, somewhere around $300 million. Excuse me. I've mostly stopped feeling sick. That's a good thing. But yeah, we could certainly go down the list of like StarCraft, Warcraft, Diablo games and think about in the potential future where they would come back to those and remaster them, release the old games again, make them more playable without having to pull out Battle.net launchers. And almost certainly on Game Pass they'll start releasing games like that. But I imagine Diablo 4, I think is the Diablo they're working on, is still technically in the works, and World of Warcraft will still get updates, and Overwatch won't be immediately abandoned, but it probably will be eventually abandoned. Hearthstone will keep on playing. Heroes of the Storm will keep on going for whatever levels they are. They are definitely now less important to the overall plan, so maintenance mode may come a little bit quicker for some of these Heroes of the Storm type games or Overwatch, where the fandom is not really there and there's not a lot of reason to maintain them. Of course, if Overwatch or Heroes of the Storm actually came to the Game Pass, then maybe they could build up more of a fandom and revitalize it. Let's see. Other news. Susan Wojcicki put out a retweet, an update for YouTube Originals. I had forgotten YouTube Originals even existed. Let's see. So, the person in charge of YouTube Originals, Suzanne, has decided to leave YouTube, and her last day will be March 1. So she's getting a special thanks for the company. What does this really have to do with YouTube Originals? I guess she was in charge of that. Which arguably, I assume that means that YouTube Originals are kind of dead. It was a dumb idea, although it definitely was something Susan Wojcicki would have loved, because it's, instead of having real YouTube content creators exist, it is instead funding TV shows for YouTube TV, effectively.
No one gets past me.
Which, yeah. There were a couple of YouTube Originals that were popular. PewDiePie Gets Scared, but that got taken down. I think the gamer Game Grumps had some YouTube originals, and Rhett and Link had Of Good Mythical Morning had a YouTube original. The Return to the Karate Kid was a YouTube original that was really the only one that had major success, because that's actually got converted over to Netflix, where people actually watched it. But yeah, at the core of it, YouTube Originals was picking winners and losers, and that's something Susan Wojcicki loves to do, is to create elites and then not pass along that same opportunity for success to anyone else that she doesn't exalt. And even in that case, PewDiePie was created and exalted as an elite and then canceled over just a heated gamer moment. I believe he said the N-word while playing a game in a live stream or something. That was a long time ago though, and that was a couple years ago, and I don't think people really remember or care that much. But good riddance to YouTube Originals. If only YouTube could get rid of a lot of their specialized products to focus on actually just making the core thing that is offered to all content creators better, instead of putting secret back channels to success in place for the elite, or giving secret access to different upload software or secret statistics to successful channels, which almost certainly that is the case, or giving extra access to people so that they can content an ID and claim things that they don't really own.
No one gets past me.
That would be appreciated also.
March on! Harder armor! Steel yourself!
Like, you have to really admit that the YouTube Content ID software, they put way too much work into that compared to like Twitch that barely put any work whatsoever with their copyright stuff. Like, all they needed to do instead of making it easy would have been to just say, let's not make it easy, let's not really automate it, let's make everybody scan all of YouTube and see if they have a Content ID claim. Like, if somebody had to actually watch all the content on YouTube to find out if their music was in a YouTube video, that would have been much better. And yeah, that was the way it was before, and yes, they were getting sued, but they're still getting sued, and all they've done is manage to irritate the actual content creators, which was their backbone, by accommodating non-content creators such as patent trolls or copyright trolls. Moving on with video game news, though. The cloud-only version of Kingdom Hearts series will cost $90. They'll be able to buy it next month. This is Video Games Chronicles. Not as bad of a price at first, because remember, this isn't just the first Kingdom Hearts. This is Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, and some of the side games too. So yeah, the 4 games that are actually included: Kingdom Hearts HD 1+5, 1.5 plus 2.5 remix, HD 2.8 final chapter prologue, Kingdom Hearts 3 plus remind, and Kingdom Hearts Intrigram Masterpiece for the cloud. Is the combination of all 3 of these. So you're actually getting a fairly good discount by buying all 3 of these, even if you compare adding up these 3 separate games, because overall this would be $90 Well, $50 plus $50 is $140. And you're getting definitely a lot of game there. In fact, you're getting way too much game there. And that is inherently the argument against buying any Kingdom Hearts products, is to now look at it and say, oh, this is just a ridiculously long RPG game that desperately needs an abridgment and a rewrite, because it is not only ridiculously long in its it's ridiculously long in its
Resolution in my right hand.
in its storyline and characters also.
At your service.
Didn't move fast enough. Yep. And yeah, when you have that problem of it just being so ridiculously long, what you need to do is they need to effectively just start over. Get rid of all of the Final Fantasy Square Enix characters, first of all. Bring this down to Donald, Mickey, and Goofy. Make it a Disney-only game. And you'd think Disney would have been smart enough to realize that. Final Fantasy games are long enough on their own anyways that there really didn't need to be a mix. Disney is big enough on its own to stand on its own 2 feet. They need to get rid of the finish, just be done with Kingdom Hearts, and move into having 2 separate things. One more Final Fantasy game, more than you normally would release, and one Disney game, Disney RPG. And even at that, both of those games, those hypothetical games, still need to be more abridged and shortened up. Which I definitely am feeling that as I'm still playing Fallout 3. I managed to do a whole DLC quest effectively without starting the DLC quest in Fallout 3. So I went through an entire dungeon that now I'm going to start that quest at some point in the future, and then it's going to have me go back to a dungeon just full of empty, dead enemies, and I'll just like run in and run around quickly and then run out just to actually finish the quest. Which, yeah, Fallout 3 is bad about that. There are a few places where you need the key to enter a dungeon, and you need to kind of start the quest before you enter the dungeon, but there's a lot of places in Fallout 3 that are just accessible. You can just go into the place and kill everything and grind out and get the XP, and maybe you would have a quest that points you to that location later, but maybe you wouldn't. They are very low level 3rd or 4th tier quests, not something that actually would give you experience or anything. And effectively I am playing the game wrong because of that. But it's designed in such a weird way that most players of the game will play the game wrong. There's just no way around it. You're going to walk to a building, you're going to discover a building, being naturally curious. You would expect... You would expect players to go into the building and investigate. Moving on with video game news, Danganronpa Anniversary Edition just got a surprise release on Xbox and PC Game Pass, which we saw this news right as we were wrapping up on Monday. Let's see. The There's no more evidence here, though, that it's coming to Steam. Yeah. They are saying specifically PC versions of Game Pass, which leaves Steam people and people like me who have the original version out in the cold. Although I don't know if there really is much of a difference between the version I played and the Anniversary Edition. It may be basically nothing. 5 random enemies instead. Or just go ahead and play this.
Annihilate them.
Can't really do anything else. I'm out of cards. The next Game Pass titles have leaked, including Death's Doors and Takai no Tatsujin, which I don't know what that actually is. Update, they've been officially announced. Yeah, I really hate it when you have to just like look at the pictures to try and figure out what games. Rainbow Six Extraction here. I have no idea what this is. Takai no Tatsujin is the drumming game. Come to think of it, Rainbow Six Siege. Yeah. This is Windjammers 2, I would suspect. Nobody Saves the World, Paparazzi, The Hitman Collection, Death's Door, Trigger Happy, Havoc, Danganronpa. Call of Duty Vanguard sales were down 36% in the UK during 2021. Call of Duty was a Activision Blizzard product, so yeah. It is important in the historical perspective to not overlook that it's not just controversies around Hearthstone and the Blizzard stuff. The Call of Duty controversies also are a problem. If you don't like it, don't buy it, being the statement put out when they did the incredibly historically inaccurate character with a prosthetic arm or leg, a female character. But I think the prosthetics, frankly, were more of a problem in my mind than her being female on the battlefield, although that also is somewhat historically, at least it feels historically inaccurate. But yeah, the attempt to be super woke in the trailer for Call of Duty, when it was fairly obvious that the Call of Duty fandom is not going to be in the super woke crowd and cool with that, so being so thrown in their face, those controversies, and just more to the point, Call of Duty games being bad in general, have also been filling up our news feeds for feels like 2.5 years at least. At a certain point, you almost have to wonder if the Activision Call of Duty team was actively trying to sabotage Activision Blizzard and the entire company, which might be the case. I mean, if you're just so irate and you just want to be done with it, it's hard to do good work in that case, and it is tempting to do bad work in that case, and intentionally eliminate yourself from being employed.
We'll return light to the canal.
At your service.
Let's see.
Wait!
Is it over already?
a Cuphead and Ori music concert is coming to London,
You're done for.
both on the 6th of March at the London Royal
Must end.
Festival Hall, which is going to feature some music from Ori Will the Wisp and some music from Cuphead. So I imagine this is a presentation that will have other songs. It seems like there will be one concert at 3 p.m. Followed by a second symphonic concert at 7 p.m. So the first one is a big band ensemble playing jazz, and then they will get off the stage at 7 p.m. and a symphony will get on the stage to play Ori, Will, and the Wisp. And I wonder if that's just because the music is so different. That would be my assumption, is that you couldn't have the same people playing or the same backing instruments. No, actually it's completely different people. The Bartos Parnell Orchestra and then the Philharmonic Orchestra. Although I feel like Philharmonia Orchestra, not Philharmonic. I think the phrase Philharmonic is actually a phrase and not particularly a name of a specific orchestra, but I could be wrong. And the Hertfordshire Chorus. So, yeah.
Shields ready for action.
It definitely sounds like there's more
Here to plunder
people
village.
gonna be on stage than you would think.
March on!
Just puff this guy up
Feel
just
free
to do
call
that.
on me again.
Although I am just about to lose.
Question
Anyways,
book design is
the
meaningless.
Judgment actor will reportedly star in a live-action series. Television spin-off has reportedly been signed on by Japan's Asahi TV. Okay, this I guess was not the actor that was caught with drugs. I think that was not Judgment. I think that was a Yakuza actor. Him being in a Japanese TV series might be good, but it might also be pretty low budget by Hollywood standards, and it might be pretty garbage. At a certain point, this might be an interesting first foray into seeing what video game to TV translations look like for Japan compared to the notoriously bad anime to TV, to live action TV.
No one gets past me.
Translations have been. Like, even a fairly recent Bleach Japanese live action video is still pretty bad. It would be unfair to compare the translation, this Judgment potential translation, to the awful Netflix translations, though, because Netflix is not a Japanese production company, and Netflix clearly doesn't know what they're doing in that field, and I don't know if anybody knows what they're doing in that field, but yeah, the Cowboy Bebop live action would be an unfair comparison. That will almost certainly happen. The Bleach, not the Bleach, the Death Note translation will be a comparison. Although, in all fairness, I'd say the Death Note translation for Netflix really doesn't feel like it ever wanted to be like anything like the Death Note anime, which probably was a smarter move. They probably should have just had more budget to double down on that concept of, let's make something called Death Note, but let's completely change the story and what happens.
Judgment awaits
And
the
it is worth still mentioning that the Witcher book to TV translation
Pray for victory.
has worked well for Netflix for the most part. I haven't seen the Witcher season 2 yet. The
Here I come.
Castlevania video game to anime translation for Netflix has worked out fairly well.
Shields ready for
Pretty great, actually.
My aspirations give me strength.
So Netflix has had some successes out there.
Now's my chance.
Oh, I've gone and mucked things up.
Move out. Annihilate them.
Enemy or no, you did good.
Now, we're seeing some network errors here, and I wonder if that is my DNS setup. And I might have to make some adjustments there because my DNS crypt setup, there's definitely room to have more than one server for DNS. You should have more than one server to get faster faster receptions. And right now I have everything going just through one. It's going to be a project certainly though, and I'm trying not to spend so much time doing home networking stuff. But yeah, there's a software that I'd have to get more low level and change the configuration to set up multiple servers, and that software is either called Unbound or Stubby. I can't remember which one it is. And yeah, if I set that up and had that run, then I could have multiple DNS crypt services, or I could just also have some backup non-DNS crypt servers, but that then effectively just once again creates the situation where
Shields ready for
you're not getting 100% guaranteed protection, or an attempt at 100% guaranteed protection for what it can do if
I'm coming.
5% of all of your traffic is going through a unencrypted spyable server. That doesn't help you much. That being said, it also did just have me click retry and then it immediately retried, so that's not a big deal. Of course, everybody raced to talk about the Activision Blizzard thing. I haven't mentioned that that includes King, so they now own Candy Crush owner King, and so they put out this picture highlighting what they're focused on. Overwatch. Remember, Lego delayed the Overwatch Lego set because of all these controversies. Diablo. Interesting that the Diablo being shown here is not the Diablo 4 girl. Call of Duty. I'm not sure who this guy is from Call of Duty, so I don't know if he's important or not. World of Warcraft. Showing a dark elf here. I'm not sure if that's particularly that important. These could just been the images they grabbed first and have nothing to do with anything. Candy Crush being focused on, and then StarCraft showing just a guy, which I'd expect that would be who you would use in StarCraft, because you don't want to potentially tease that
Plunder and pillage.
you're going to go back and try and make StarCraft Ghost again, and that the Queen of Blades is going to be a major focus as a character in StarCraft, because she definitely became a bit too much of a focus.
May happiness be with you.
There's a longer list here of companies, which, man, I'm going to have to zoom in again if I was going to really look at these. Let's see if my magnifier can help us here. Treyarch, Raven, High Moon, Beanox, I think is what that says. Sledgehammer Games, Infinity Ward, Demonware, and Toys for Bob. So, yeah, there's a fairly long list of companies that also don't immediately sound like they are Activision Blizzard, but they are.
Give me peace.
But yeah, as I said, I am very tired of hearing about it. Like, here you can see even Video Games Chronicles putting out 3 or 4 articles in a row. Bobby Kotick will remain CEO after the acquisition, even though the rumors are now saying that's exactly untrue. Xbox says it will put as many Activision Blizzard's games as it can on Games Pass, which there may be a lot of pre-existing contracts that they'll have to wait out, but they've got the time certainly, and that it's not like they're going to try and immediately release all of them on Games Pass. So they can wait until a contract runs out and then release it on Games Pass. Here they have a full list of all the games Microsoft would own once this all goes through.
I'm coming for you.
So, Blur, Caesar, haven't heard of them. Call of Duty, Candy Crush, Crash Bandicoot. That's a little surprising. That's Toys for Bob, I suppose. Diablo, DJ Hero. I doubt they'll do much with Guitar Hero, DJ Hero, because hardware would still be a problem. Unless they can just get a MIDI input or a microphone that listens to anybody playing any guitar, which that would be the next step, is to not even require like a MIDI Bluetooth to Bluetooth controller adapter or a plug-in adapter, but just straight up plug in any microphone and we will listen to the note that's played in real time and figure out if you played it right or not. Earth Empire, I haven't heard of. Gabriel Knight's a point-and-click adventure. Geometry Wars, Gun, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, Hexen, Interstate 76, I don't know, King's Quest, Laura Bow Mysteries is probably another point-and-click. Lost Vikings is basically a point-and-click. Overwatch Phantasmagoria is a live-action point-and-click adventure. Pitfall, very old game, but historically relevant, so there probably should be re-releases of it, if not an attempt to reboot it. It's basically Indiana Jones swinging over vines. Police Quest is a point-and-click, kind of. A lot of these are actually Sierra games, were text games. Again, reboots of these, remakes of these, not remakes as much as just full reboots of these would make sense. Otherwise, there's no reason to even bother to try and touch them.
Do not stand in our way.
Give me
My legion
peace.
falls.
Loyalty is
Your
ironclad.
queen commands
A
you.
thankless job.
Steel yourself.
It seems I've lost.
Yeah.
Nothing I can't handle.
Prototype, I don't know which game this is. The name sounds familiar, but there could be a couple of different games called Prototype.
Refuse to fail.
Quest for Glory is probably another point and click or a text game. Singularity is a kind of failed first-person shooter. Soldier of Fortune, they might try and bring that back. Space Quest is another point and click. Spyro the Dragon.
Just getting started.
Okay, they reboot that, continue that. StarCraft, reboot that, continue that. Tenchu Legacy Games. Time Shift is easily a game you would just confuse with Singularity. Pro Skater, definitely you would want to focus on. True Crime, World of Warcraft, and Zork. If you take out the Sierra games in this list, though, there's considerably less games, although these are more series as much as just individual games in some cases too. There's a lot of Call of Duties. There's 3 or 4 Diablos. There's plenty of Guitar Hero versions. If anything, when I look at a list like that, I'm actually a little surprised the list is not larger. Because it definitely feels like for a company that big in valuation that it would be more. But I guess that just highlights the fact that Activision Blizzard has been spending a lot of effort to monetize all of their games as much as possible. It is almost the equivalent of what an acquisition of Electronic Arts would feel like, where EA has only 4 or 5 games worth mentioning, but they make enough money with FIFA and such that it could be a $80 to $100 billion acquisition if somebody did acquire them. Then next article could be on a collision course. The merger could be on a collision course with lawmakers. Although it's believed it will likely go through, as everything goes through. The problem with any kind of antitrust claim in this would be, what part of the industry are they gaining a major share of? There's still going to be plenty of video game companies that exist, particularly if you just treat every small independent single game dev as the same as a major publishing development company. Yeah, so like owning 2 storefronts in Battle.net and the Microsoft Store might be a problem, but it's pretty much assumed that they're going to get rid of Battle.net, so no problem there. This doesn't, of course, dismiss any of the claims that the government have against Activision Blizzard. Those still go forward. If anything, this accusation allows Bobby Kotick to save face, because he can simply now, Microsoft can force them to admit guilt and move forward, instead of having to, and they can just blame the old people like Bobby Kotick who are on their way out the door, where Bobby Kotick can stay silent until he's out the door and then come back and say, oh, actually it was Microsoft that made that agreement and I completely disagreed with it, but I was on the way out anyways. Like, more likely they'd have Bobby Kotick leave the company, and then like the next day they would settle and then blame Bobby Kotick, and what would he care? And then the next story is Xbox reportedly intends to keep making some Activision games for PlayStation, which, yeah, this has been the consistent line. Certainly that Microsoft has said that they will still, on a case-by-case basis, consider releasing PlayStation versions of some games because they want money. Man, I should have told you at the beginning just to keep a running count of how many articles are not about the acquisition, because for Video Games Chronicles here, it may very well be 2 or 3 out of 20. Again, they say he could make $350 million from the acquisition. He could also receive another $290 million if he pushed out following the takeover, is the speculation, although I've heard that number is a little lower, but whatever. And then you can see the stories continue. He is expected to leave following the takeover. Bobby Kotick has been an embarrassment not just for the video games company though, but for CEOs and big business in general, since he has overcompensated himself so much. He's just been consistently in the top 20 most overpaid or highest paid CEOs of all businesses. He is obviously incredibly greedy and blatant about how he pays himself. So as much as I kind of feel like this Microsoft acquisition might be a big business protectionist scheme to do some union busting on behalf of another company, it also is a big business protectionist scheme to take all the bad negative press that happens around the big business reports in general when that annual most overpaid CEO list comes up. Let me put on a tinfoil hat here too. The whole Epstein, Ghislaine, Maxwell trial is still kind of going on. That drama, that story certainly is still going on. There are, and remember, I'm just tinfoil hatting here. I have no evidence to this blatant unprofessional speculation I'm about to make. There are 8 unnamed conspirators whose identities have yet to be revealed because Ghislaine's lawyers were fighting to not reveal that. Very recently, her lawyers have said we're no longer going to spend money and effort to fight to keep these people private. If Bobby Kotick is somehow wrapped up in the Epstein stuff or some other controversy that we haven't heard about already, it doesn't have to be Epstein, it could be anything. He might very well be a ticking time bomb. It is not super crazy to assume if somebody is surrounded by controversy already that there's more stuff that has yet to be digged up. And I would suspect that that probably is the case. So, yeah. Bobby's got to go. As much as I don't really believe in the idea of cancel culture, I don't think it's really much cancel culture to say somebody who pays themselves too much and then does a bad job of maintaining a good working environment to the point where the government is suing you is a bad businessman, and bad businessmen should be fired. CEOs and management people should get fired a lot more often than they do. Poop should roll uphill a lot more than it does. But yeah, he's been bad for Activision Blizzard and only good for himself. Here we go. Finally, a non-merger story. Take-Two CEO claims the GTA trilogy has done great following the release glitch. Which he's saying, like, the original release problems was just a glitch, which I think that's probably a major effort to downplay the dissatisfaction around a mobile port being sold as a remaster of the GTA trilogy, or 3 of the GTA games. Calling it the trilogy, even that doesn't really make sense, because it's a trilogy, yes, but it's a trilogy of of 2, 3, and 4, or 2, 3, and a side story.
Is it over already?
Scratch my post!
No
We're
one
ready
gets
to
past
say
me.
it wouldn't! Don't let a single rat escape!
And probably not very much
Your service.
news. Here, Video Game Chronicle says Sony shares fell 13%, dropping 20 billion off their market valuation, but the market valuations definitely swing around, and this is definitely speculators selling Sony to short it, or shorting Sony. Like, Sony isn't like immediately on life support. Nothing's really changed at Sony just because of these acquisitions. It's not like Microsoft just acquired the Uncharted makers, or a company that is specifically the backbone of Sony. If anything, while Sony doesn't directly own a lot of their big AAA game developers, they are funding and supporting and publishing a lot of their AAA games. So yeah, if they lost Uncharted, if they were the second place of choice for every cross-platform game, then they would be in trouble. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft definitely timed this announcement to try and hurt Sony as much as possible. But honestly, I don't feel like Microsoft plays that kind of hardball with Sony. If this was the beginning of Sony and Microsoft playing real hardball and really competing with each other, that'd be interesting. We might actually start to see some real price wars happening between hardware and game sales. That might be interesting, because any real competition would definitely be interesting. Sony still has a lot of clout in Japan, even though they're losing a lot of that to Nintendo. I wouldn't, though, be surprised if Sony of California eventually does just get bored and give up and maybe hand back the reins to Sony of Japan, or just tries to get out of the business completely. Let's see.
My legion follows.
My loyalty is
Your
ironclad.
queen commands you.
On to retreat.
Do not stand in our way.
Steel yourself.
I
go ahead
refuse
and
to fail.
Kill that. Banjo-Kazooie is coming to the Nintendo Switch Online tomorrow, so I think this had already been announced. I feel like I tried to play Banjo-Kazooie. I may have rented it or something. I don't think I got very far in it, though. Honestly, I may have never actually played it at all. I may have played it for like 5 seconds in a kiosk in a store, or just seen other people play it enough that I vaguely remember it. And then we're back to mergers and acquisition news here, with Bobby Kotick saying he considered buying gaming sites like Kotaku or PC Gamer is being claimed. He wanted to basically own the news press to change the narrative and get rid of all the bad press, which, yeah. Kotaku and PC Gamer and Your Gamer, I think, are all owned by the same people. If not, they're definitely run by kind of the same people at this point, which is just not really journalists. And they are long since hated, and I think from most people's opinion, abandoned. You would have to be either very young or just unaware, or just not care about all the hated controversy around Kotaku in particular, if you're still following Kotaku. I can't really do anything more.
Move out! Annihilate them!
Let's see, next article. Horizon Forbidden West gets a new story trailer and character screens. Here we can see another image. I don't know why they do these images face on for this character. Like, they seriously need to just put in a rule to get her face in profile to get rid of these, like, this 3D face model. Because we're once again just back to her face feeling oddly rounded and chubby, and I really feel like the fact that we're continuing to see that is just their commitment to not changing the depiction of the character, but it just doesn't look good. And in all fairness, if this was Hollywood, comments on the appearances of actors' faces and their bodies are pretty common and kind of necessary. Yeah, in profile she looks not that good either. The whole bone structure and stuff just looks off. I mean, A, it doesn't look good, and B, it looks off from what the previous game looked like. And I think they're doubling down on it for stupid, egotistical reasons. I don't see the same problem in any of the other faces that I see in the game. Although, in fairness, all the other faces are painted and have masks around it. So it's kind of hard to compare. I almost wonder if they're going to say that she's like pregnant, or she's been pregnant and she gained a whole bunch of weight because of that. Or even more pathetically, it's just because she's become a better hunter and thus she's eating better and gained weight. Like something fairly ridiculous like that. Like, it's a great example of where you don't want realism in your movies. You don't want realism in video games. I want all the digital de-aging, all the digital makeup possible. I want people to look pretty. Coming from being a former anime fan, like, one of the best things about anime and things being animated is the fact that you don't have to make things realistic, and you can do a level of perfection that is unrealistic, but also just more visually appealing. Like, her face is a little chubby too, but nowhere as bad. Her face is super skinny. And honestly, just because this controversy has happened, interesting. That's an interesting outfit, and perhaps an interesting spoiler to the end of the game. Now, I haven't even played the first Horizon game, so I'm not particularly one to care one way or the other, but yeah. Fine. The second that controversy happened, this would have been one of those situations where you should have just reacted totally differently. Like, you should have just kowtowed to it and said, okay, you guys don't like that face, we'll go back to the drawing board, we'll animate it. You now have every single new announcement mired with that complaint and that comparison until it is removed from the table. No amount of excuses or explanations really is going to fix that. Almost certainly within the first 2 weeks there will be some kind of hacker mod that changes the face of the main character to look skinnier, and that will just again double down on the stupidity of keeping that. When making a movie, if you did a screen testing of an actress and you got feedback from people and they said we don't like how she looks, you're going to immediately change the person either fire the actress, get a new actress, or change the appearance of the actress, put different makeup on, put different outfits on. You don't stick with that in most cases. Moving on, Battlefield 2042's next update includes stability improvements, a scoreboard refresh, and XP adjustments. I doubt too many people care at the moment. Nagoshi Studio looks like Yakuza's creator's next venture. The former Sega creative director apparently is making a new studio or moving to a new studio. Yeah, I think he's moving to a new studio. Or is Nagoshi possibly? Yeah, he created Nagoshi Studio as best as I can figure, and he is now trying to partner with NetEase in some way. Boy, I'm not getting the full story here. They did not explain that well. I don't like this card because you can do the enhanced, but also you need an evolved, so there needs to be kind of a secondary enhance notification. Let's see. GameStop is selling Xbox Series X consoles online. The Switch version of Dying Light 2 has been delayed. Techland now aims to deliver it within 6 months of the previously planned February release. Which, that must mean that they really were not testing it on the Switch. Or they found some kind of major problem. Call of Duty Vanguard Warzone Pacific Season 2 Update 2, or Season 2 Update, has been delayed. Activision says it's focused on fixing issues across the franchise. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Activision Blizzard's properties go into a semi-permanent maintenance mode as people are going to blame the pandemic or simply
Sparks of blood shall soon fly.
they're going to either blame the pandemic or they're going to simply try to do as little work as possible.
I've waited for this moment.
So yeah, that could be a big deal. And we've got actually a fairly large amount of games that came out on Steam, so I think today,
No regrets.
because we're trying to keep everything short and sweet, we'll go with the old school yes no mentality and just say no to a game like Trigger Dungeon and close the tab without scrolling down and looking at the price or checking the English language. We'll make some assumptions about Chinese games and just assume anything that looks like a Chinese game is a Chinese game. See, fun and dynamic game, it says. That's a terrible description, so that's going to be a no. Shoot 'em up Starship Wars looks uninteresting, so that's going to be a no. Nobody Says the World, though. It's probably already on the fall list. If it's not, it should be on the fall list. 22.49. It's fairly expensive. Several languages. Not 100% sure that this hack and slash action RPG is something that I want to play, but you can see right now it's 83% positive, so I think people are having fun with it. It's from the creators of Guacamelee, so there might be something interesting there too. And that's a good thing that the creators of Guacamelee got away from doing just Guacamelee, since it's not like they're a Spanish company and they didn't want to pigeonhole themselves into only doing Spanish themed games. Zombie Smasher, I think we can pretty much say no to. Time Master might not be anything, but it visually looks polished enough. You have this whole like cutscene that they're showing off in the trailer that I don't think any of that has anything to do with the actual gameplay.
Now die. Nothing I can't handle.
Actual gameplay seems to be a time manipulation platforming game. Making, I assume, clones of yourself. We'll give it a follow. It's $8.99. English, allegedly has full audio. Mental Math Tutor. Looks like garbage, so we can say no to that. Killer Worm 2. Doesn't look visually polished enough, so we'll say no to that. Paranormal Detective Escape the 90s. Looks like it's an escape to room game or an asset flip game. Take your pick. It's a VR game, so I'm going to give it a follow because it's a VR game, pretty much only because it's a VR game. $10.19, English only, allegedly full audio. Blacksmith Legends is already mixed and doesn't really look like anything, so we'll say no to that. Evolve this follower.
Resolution in my right hand, might in my left.
We'll return light to the canals.
At your service. No one gets past me.
This little hex's payback.
2 blades in one go.
Scratch my post. We're ready to sail? Don't let a single rat escape.
Ancient Gladiators here looks like garbage, and frankly looks like it's just an excuse to have some scantily clad bikini lady, although they're not even really focusing on him and her as much as they're just showing other random people.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That's gonna be a no. Chessformer here looks like it's a platformer using chess pieces, so maybe they move on a grid.
The land of the living.
May happiness be with you.
They move up and down, still following kind of the grid rules, so it's almost a box sliding puzzle.
I'm coming.
There might be something to this, just having like the general idea of learning how pieces can move while not having to play a full game of chess. So I'm going to give this a follow. 424 English only. I could see little kids being given this game and learning the chess piece movements better than any other game like that, because I've seen that attempted several times and never really successfully done. Alright, let's do this.
Fastest blades in the east.
Let's do this.
Here to plunder and pillage.
And let's do this.
Scratch my post. We're ready to sail?
Do
Shashing.
that.
Today
Do
we
that.
fight.
Yeah, I love this job. Of course I do.
Do that.
Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
Do that.
Ready the paw cannons!
In turn.
Little single rat escape! Move out! Annihilate them!
Here we have a game called Ephemeral Tale, which looks like it's a RPG game. It's zoomed in better than most though, so it actually looks fairly good. I don't think I'd actually want to play a game like this still. Like, it's just not my bag, but I'm almost willing to put it on the follow list and see how other people feel about it. $14.99, English only. Yeah, let's give it a follow. Here we have a game called Red Tether, which looks like it's a top-down shooter. $11.69, English only. It's too much red. I'd only play a game this red if it was one of the Virtual Boy games, and even then I think turning the red into black and white is probably a smart move, which you can do that in emulation. So I'll know the Red Tether. Here we have one of these hidden object adventure games for Big Fish Games. Crossroads, on a Just Path Collector's Edition for $12.59, English allegedly full audio. We'll say no to that just because we are pretty much always saying no to
plunder and pillage.
those kinds of games.
Shashing!
Send out an SOS!
My aspirations give me strength.
One step closer to victory!
I'll carve my own future.
Let's see. Go ahead and do that.
Now's my chance.
How could
Attack
you?
there.
That's mine.
And then to turn.
Move out! Annihilate them!
We have a game here, Ever Seen a Cat, which looks like it's just a hidden object game. Find the cats in differently colored images. Effectively though, this is still just one of those black and white find the objects. They've just paint bucketed in the black and white to make it look somewhat more colorful. $1.69 English only, that's a no. Hop, skip, and thump. Does not look like anything of interest. Looks like a mobile game, so no to that. Lost Scavenger. Looks like an asset flip garbage game, so no to that. Marvada Island. Doesn't look polished enough and kind of looks like a mobile game, so no to that. We may be burning through these faster than I thought I would, but that's fine.
Revolution in my right hand, might in my left.
Okay.
Two blades in one go.
You can't run!
Actually, I should have played this.
Will never betray
At
you.
your service!
I might still be able to win
This is
here.
our last push!
Betrayal is something. Stop them where they stand.
For a second there, I thought I was going to lose, but you can definitely see how there are. It's having little network
We
hiccups.
destroyed them!
And I assume that's just because I have one DNS server. I also turned on QoS again, and QoS can be a nightmare. We haven't had any drop frames streaming or anything like that though, so yeah. Games like these particularly do seem like they constantly want better and better connections than they often get. Let's see. Gamatsu has Ys 9 Monster Nox for PC local co-op mode update being now available, which I suppose that helps a little bit but probably not as much as one would like. Like a long-running RPG game probably would benefit from having co-op if you have somebody to play with you. Definitely feels inconsistent, but yeah. It seems like it is working after a few tries. Or 1 or 2 tries. We already kind of talked about the
There's a battle underway.
anniversary edition of
Is
Danganronpa.
fighting in despair all you know?
Let's see. The anniversary edition additional contents includes an intimacy galleries. Intimacy events are compiled in a gallery form. Replay your favorite characters and events whenever you want. Characters galleries lets you view character sprites and lines in a gallery. And the ultimate gallery, which is full of promotional and character sheets from the official art book. So that's really not a lot of additional content. It's something that should have just been there with the second release of Danganronpa, if not the first release of Danganronpa. I can excuse it not being in the first release because I'm sure they never really expected it to be as successful as it became. But the second release has less of an excuse there because they knew it was popular when they released the second release of the game. Let's see, moving on. Monster Hunter Rise shipments and digital sales have topped 8 million. It was recently launched for PC. I still feel like you would kind of want to start with Monster Hunter World though, and instead of playing Monster Hunter Rise, if you're going to play Monster Hunter. The Kingdom Hearts series cloud versions for Switch launched February 10th. We already knew that. And Kingdom Hearts 20th anniversary event is set for April 10th, which probably won't say much. My Heroes 1 Justice 2 DLC character Kurogiri has been announced, which I assume is this character's Kurogiri. Anno Mutationem goes gold. This is, I think, a game we've heard about. What kind of game is it? Action adventure game? It's kind of pointless to even talk about things before they actually come out. Definitely is a different kind of news, particularly. Like, we almost always get news like this where it's just advertisements and press releases for games that we don't know anything about. And then when you have actual newsworthy news about a major acquisition in the Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, you clearly can see there's a different approach to it. There's more actual facts. There's more things that are actually relevant instead of just
I'll eat their troops for breakfast.
just what is mostly a bunch of fluff and unimportant advertisements. Like, even back to back, you can see that there is more weight to this kind of announcement and more importance to this kind of announcement than a new game maybe coming out and maybe having a release date or maybe adding a new character. Video Games Chronicles missed this announcement though. The Cuphead show premieres February 18th on Netflix and the trailer is out. I watched the trailer. It is a kind of animated cartoon. They're calling it, Gamatsu is tagging it as anime because they would just tag every animated thing anime in Japan, and then Gamatsu is basically a Japanese company as far as I can tell.
Steel yourself.
it might work better because you're not going to have the need for the video game elements and the super difficult gameplay. But it also kind of is almost like a tongue-in-cheek presentation looking at the trailer. Yeah, I think the danger here is that when it actually airs, it's going to feel a little bit like the Disenchanted cartoon. And just not have an actual appeal to it. Like, it may be too on the nose. These are very generic phrases I'm using. Suffice it to say, watching the trailer, it felt a little off. And in all fairness, if I went back and tried to watch a Tom and Jerry cartoon, I wouldn't be surprised if that felt a little off too, and that there is just kind of no going home. And once you start to look at things with a somewhat critical eye, you start to realize that the old Tom and Jerry cartoons weren't that funny. Or maybe we will watch Cuphead and realize actually it's not as funny as an old Tom and Jerry cartoon. That might very well be the case too. So cautiously optimistic is probably the right way to stay. Even if it is successful, what does that really mean? Do we see Cuphead turn into like a long-running cartoon series and that feeds into a Cuphead 2 and maybe 3, but maybe it doesn't and we just never see another Cuphead game? I'd be kind of fine with that either way, but I imagine Cuphead will be a flash in the pan in the long run, and we'll get one series of this Cuphead on Netflix, and then Netflix will say, well, that animation style didn't succeed and nobody liked it, and then maybe we'll get a Cuphead 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if we actually don't get a Cuphead 2 even. I'd kind of like to see them go in a completely different direction, both animations, as far as the characters that are animated and as far as the gameplay that's available. Yeah. In a lot of ways, Cuphead was forced to become something that it really didn't want to be by adding the platforming elements, and they either need to go in that direction completely and make the game easier, or because they were kind of forced to also make the game easier and still didn't really do it.
Do not stand in our way. My legion follows.
So maybe they should go that same direction and have new characters and just a standard platformer. We Happy Few is another game that was kind of forced to go in the wrong direction. I've been watching a lot of British shows about restoring old buildings and turning them into houses, like restoring old churches and schools and things in the UK. One show in particular is called The Restoration Man. And one of the things that you kind of quickly realize that maybe that's kind of harder to know if you don't live in the UK is just how much the local government wants all the buildings to stay the same, and it's not the Japanese style. It's the exact opposite of construction compared to the Japanese style, where you will tear down a relatively new building and build a whole new building. In the UK, it's like, no, this building is 300 years old and it must be remodeled, it must be maintained. We kind of don't care if you make the entire inside difference so that effectively there's a house that is then skinned by a 300-old outside house, but they're keeping up appearances. And when you have that perspective, and I'm sure that is something that the creators of We Happy Few kind of had as a perspective, but didn't really explain to everybody who wanted to play We Happy Few. It definitely is the same feeling of what happens in We Happy Few, is that they want to live in the past, they want to keep everything the same, and they're effectively betraying the future generations by making it incredibly expensive and difficult to change the way a city looks, to build a house, to move into a house. And that's definitely what happens in the UK too, is that it is just completely impossible it will be completely impossible for the next generation of people to build new houses, to build modern houses, to have anywhere to live at all, because every house has been remodeled to the point where you have a house that should cost £100,000 costing £500,000 because of all the remodeling and all the maintenance necessary to it. And so, yeah, I oddly would recommend watching a few episodes of Restoration Man before playing We Happy Few, if you're going to play We Happy Few. Should you play We Happy Few? Probably not. That's a game that needs to be remade and abridged. Again, take that art style that people were excited about, but put it in a different game that makes a lot more sense for the story you want to tell. Which would be easier to do that in We Happy Few than Cupman, because it was just the surviving and the crafting that, frankly, those gameplay mechanics could have been taken out, and it could have been a much shorter, just linear adventure game. You could pretty much take any point-and-click adventure game, add survival mechanics to it, and it would be a much worse experience, like We Happy Few. Moving on. Komatsu says Matchpoint Tennis Champions has been announced for basically everything. I'm not sure how much tennis games sell, or if we really need a tennis game. Here we've got the blur on the video. Yeah, so it looks like hyper-realistic graphics, or at least a decent realistic graphics, and running around and playing tennis, which is pretty much what you would expect from any tennis game in the past 6 or 7 years. So, is there really a need for another one? I don't know. I kind of feel like tennis is one of the mini games that is playable enough for most people. You're not going to be a pro at it, but it's playable enough for most people that it really should be a sport that kind of stays out of the digital form and stays as a real world only style game. Because yeah, I just don't see a lot of demand there otherwise. Whereas you have something like Solitaire. Solitaire, in comparison, in contrast, is a game that works way better in digital form than in the real world, because you don't have to deal with the sorting of cards, the shuffling of cards, the dealing of cards. You can, of course, play Solitaire in the real world just fine, but playing it on a cell phone is faster and easier. Let's see, the Artful Escape is coming to PS5, PS4, and Switch on January 25th. It's currently already available for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC. So, kind of a shift split. What's funny about this is, I know Giant Bomb is not really reviewing too many games right now. If anything, Yeah, G4 is going in the opposite direction of Giant Bomb and reviewing too many games. But yeah, Giant Bomb apparently is somewhat one of the people who's playing this game now that it's about to come out on PlayStation, when they seemingly skipped it when it came out on Xbox. So I wonder if more of that has happened and I've just missed it, where games, when they get a split release, don't get reviewed until they're on the PlayStation, because PlayStation still, I think, is the default console that a lot of reviewers and a lot of players are using. But reviewers should have every console and review the game as fast as possible. But then Giant Bomb also has the weirdness in which they let other employees play the game later on and then talk about it and give it a second boost, whereas most video game sites only talk about the game when it first comes out, and don't look at it a second time. Speaking of G4, it does seem like G4 is still kind of just doubling down on their forum and their Reddit a little bit, but yeah, we'll probably not hear too much more around G4. I think very few people were interested in it in the first place, and then this controversy has killed any momentum for any real new growth. It'll probably just stick around and be whatever it is, which is no way to have a launch, and you can only have one launch. Personally, for my YouTube, I would have liked to have a lot more resources and skill, and be able to do a relaunch now that would be very different from how I just kind of started. But I mean, I still wouldn't do it particularly well. I'm probably approaching 10 years on YouTube, so a 10-year anniversary relaunch would totally be in line, but I don't think I'd do much different, do anything better. So I'll just stick with my plan of trying to play and cover as much games as possible, and hopefully still enjoy it. Moving on, Gamatsu says Have a Nice Death launches in early access on March 8th. Which, is this the one where Death gets mad at everybody and starts hacking and slashing them? I think it is. Yeah, it's a hack and slash side scroll platformer. The Xbox Game Pass we had already talked about, so we don't need to talk about again. Banjo-Kazooie we had already talked about, so we don't need to talk about again. And yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is now available. Free-to-play digital card game gets a surprise release. So if I had more time and energy, I should be doing a spotlight of it right now. But I'll probably take a break after this stream, which seems to likely go long, and then do a spotlight pre-recorded, and then hopefully by no promises, but by Friday I think we could be playing it, unless there's just something incredibly wrong with it, which is a possibility. Like if it just plays wrong, or if it just screams you're not going to get anywhere without spending a ridiculous amount of money.
I'll eat their troops for breakfast.
Game Grumps guy is playing Yu-Gi-Oh! What is it? Magic the Gathering Arena for a couple episodes because he had nobody to co-stream with him. But he comes in and out of playing Magic, and I think he plays Magic off screen quite a bit, so that's not a big surprise. The Playism Game Show for 2022 is set for January 23rd. which I'm not sure what kind of games that will show off. They said something about lineup, but I didn't really see a lineup listed there. The 100-Year Kingdom launches February 3rd. It just looks like a mobile game, strategy RPG game of some sort. Famitsu review scores for issue 1729 are out. They gave Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger 9-2 a 34 out of 40. Shikabaniguri no Bokenmishi a 32 out of 42. No idea what that would be. And Warhammer 40k Makiniavus 29 out of 40. Let's just click on that link and see what that game is. Looks like it's a JRPG with some kind of anime characters. Let's see if we can see some screenshots. Everything just wants to pop up into a new screenshot. Yeah, it looks like it's a positional placement game with kind of mobile phone chibi animation. We already talked about Horizon Forbidden West story trailer and screenshots. Yep. Even when they have her head tilted a little bit this way, that's enough profile to put light and shadow in it and just stretch out her face a little bit. I almost wonder if it isn't just a hair thing too, and if she just had hair covering over her ears and less of a poof up here, maybe then that would distract a little bit more from it. I feel like as they put out more trailers, I'm getting more and more obsessed with her puffy face. And I don't mean to become obsessed, certainly, but definitely feels like it. Once you point out a crack in the wall, for instance, it's all you can see.
Enemy or no, you did good.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get some data quests, which I played a lot of this off screen, and I finished all the daily quests in the last stream. As far as the missions, we're gone. Well, actually, if I could just get one more victory, I would get 3 of these. So that's definitely worth trying for. Let's see. The Last Worker Jungle Fulfillment Center Tour has a trailer, which this looks like this is almost taking a cartoony Borderlands art style to some kind of first person shooting, it feels like.
There's a battle underway.
Although I'm not sure that's really what this is. This might be more of a Portal puzzle game of some sort. Looks very weird. Certainly. The Last Worker at the Jungle, as in like the Amazon. So you're working at like an Amazon.com fulfillment center basically, and you've got kind of a gravity gun. Well, there might be a game there, but very possibly there isn't a game there. It's tagged as an adventure game. They're calling it a first-person narrative adventure game, and if it's about Amazon.com, I can't help but be concerned that it's going to be a little preachy. Let's see. A story-driven Witch Academy RPG called Songs of Glimmerwick has been announced for consoles and PC. Which, let's look at that. Okay. Looks somewhat interesting. A little too dark in some spots, but not terrible. See what the trailer feels like through the blurriness. Again, looks a little dark, looks kind of like you're just gonna do some adventure game stuff. It might be something not too dissimilar from the game Loom, which I always feel like there could have been 2 or 3 more games around Loom every decade or so.
Let's play.
Here we have a game called Trance, which looks like it's a kind of dark platformer. I'm not sure if it's a frustration platformer though. Short and simple game / scrolling platformer. A lot of dark screenshot syndrome. I almost feel like price is going to play a role in a game like this. Yep, $4.99 English only. We'll be generous and put this on the follow list and see what other people have to say. We had already talked about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels, and we can see it's mostly positive at 77%, which arguably is a decent price, but decent reviews certainly, but not great reviews, because you really would want a game like this to be in the 80s or 90s. Because here you have a negative review, another cash grab by Konami. Its sole purpose is to push the new Link monsters and steal your cash. RIP Yu-Gi-Oh! Does not have TC forbidden or limited list as an option. That's just odd. No time limit for each turn. So that might be a problem too. My usual getting distracted and hoping people get upset and disconnect might not work if other people are also playing by that strategy and there's no time limit. Pay to win. Negative reviews here. If you intend to go in solo, then multiplayer is not for you. The problem is slow players, and they will definitely ruin your game. However, if you have some friends and are willing to play. So yeah, the timer issue needs to be addressed. And I bet in the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! There is probably not a lot of rules of timing limits. But yeah. That being said, if there were only solo daily quests or no daily quest at all, then Yu-Gi-Oh! Masters might still work very well. It would just be a matter of if. If I got away from playing daily quests at all, that would be fine.
No one gets past me.
This does not really change the overall plans to move over to the Marvel Second Dinner game whenever that comes out. Which at some point, if Second Dinner did get acquired or Ben Brode in Second Dinner, all of its employees moved back to Microsoft Activision Blizzard at that point, then maybe the Marvel deal would be a Microsoft product, or maybe the Marvel deal would fall apart.
Enemy or no, you did good.
Yeah. Clearly I need to experiment with some backup DNS servers now. Then we're running into it timing out too often. Let's see. Moving on. We have a game called Warm Snow here, which looks like a Chinese game, but does not look like a very bad one. It's rated very positively. $17.99. Chinese full audio, English and Japanese subtitles.
There's a battle underway.
think that has to deserve a follow. Yep, this does not look bad at all. It's shockingly good. Oh, one thing to mention here is Bilibili. They own a Twitch competitor in China. It's kind of like the default, most popular Twitch live stream service. And they have recently said they're going to ban any games that from being streamed that the Chinese government bans in general. Anything with too much violence, gore, sex, pretty much any sex. So they put out a fairly long list a couple days ago of things being banned from being streamed. Which, yeah, that's not really shocking for a Chinese company to be forced or to agree to follow the laws of the land. But it definitely highlights where something like Bilibili would never become popular or successful outside of China. Here we have a game called Element Tight. And it looks kind of interesting. There might not really be much of a game here, but there's a lot of polish here that makes it feel like there's a game. A lot of flash, certainly. Like almost an attempt at making a Crisis, new Crisis, or I don't know what other game you might want to compare it to. $24.99 English, allegedly full audio, several other languages. Yeah, that definitely deserves a follow. Here we have a visual novel called Dark Reflections, which is pretty much the exact same characters in the exact same poses. Yeah, doesn't really look like much. $24.99, bunch of languages, full Japanese. Let's see. Seems like it's a murder mystery with some mature content in it. Well, we'll give it a follow, but I am not particularly impressed by the screenshots. And I question whether a murder mystery story is going to be that interesting when it's just like 4 people talking to you face to face, and that's 90% of the game. Knows how like Danganronpa effectively is the same kind of story, but they they spend a lot of effort to break up that content by having mini games and having you walk around the environment and searching for clues or searching for key coins.
We'll return light to the canals. At your service.
I can keep going.
Here we have a game called Tor Cubes, which just looks like it's an Arkanoid clone. It's 3D, but frankly, I'm not sure you need Arkanoid to be 3D. It actually looks worse in 3D than it would in 2D. $15.99 is way too expensive. $15.99 is way too expensive. English only. That's going to be a no. Freeze the time. Looks like garbage, so we could just say no to that immediately. $19.99 English only. Really expensive games, we're saying. The good news is we probably have about 40 more tabs, so we're really close to being done, closer than I would have thought. Puck Bash here is just an air hockey neon looking game, so that's going to be no. Here we have a Chinese looking game that I assume doesn't support English. Looks like it's just an escape to room adventure game of no real quality. It's free to play at least. It's Korean, not Chinese. I don't think we've seen a lot of Chinese escape room games. Here we have a game called Black Lazar, which looks like it's mostly text-based, and thus I'm not really interested in it. Although the art style is kind of distinct. It is an art style that I think only would work for one story, though. You really don't want to see characters that look like this pencil and harsh faces very often. $6.29, English only. Another site looks like it is a Chinese asset flip for as far as I can tell. $2.99 Japanese. Alina of the Arena is somehow a roguelike deck builder. So somehow they stand on these circles and then you play your cards to attack. That's not what it felt like at all. It felt like this game was just going to be an arena fighter, top-down twin-stick shooter. Interesting. So it's a different kind of positional placement game that I might be willing to try. You can see it's very positive. It's early access, so we'd have to wait until it comes out of early access, of course. English and Chinese, $10.39, might be a little too expensive.
Goodbye is inevitable.
Here we have a game
Farewell,
just called
Iolon.
Princess, which looks like nothing of interest. $9.99 English only.
I could
Here we have the
get
Ancient
used to
Art
this
of
game.
Staying Alive, which looks like garbage. $1.19 English only. Monster Breeder also looks pretty awful.
Delta Cannon.
Early access $17.99. Allegedly full English audio.
Monsters come in every shade
Hidden
imaginable.
Islands. Looks like it's probably a resource management game or a hidden object game. It's actually a hidden object game. I feel like we'd already seen this one. $5.99, several languages, and early access. There's really no reason for a hidden object game to be allowed to be sold in early access. RD Mars looks like garbage. $4.49 English only. Farside Prototype looks like a platformer. There might be something to this. It's free. I guess Prototype probably indicates that this is a demo. This is English and Chinese. So what I would say here is that this is either a prototype of a game or a demo of a game. It's free. Check it out if you're interested. But there's no reason for me to put it on the follow list and have any interest in it until an actual full game is available. If a full game is ever available. Here we have something called Watcher Chronicles, which I kind of like the art style, but I'm not sure there's much of a game here. Seems like it's just a hack and slash and dash game with where you either play as a very big boss-like creature. Oddly, you're moving from the opposite direction of the screen. Well, there might be something to it, so we'll give it a follow. $17.99 is fairly expensive. English full audio, several other languages.
Enemy or no, you did good.
Here we have a game called Fighting Mad Lads, which looks like it's just a player versus player game. Smash Brothers clone. No interest. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Smash Brothers came out with a new update, a temporary fighting spirit is what I think they're called, of evil, like one of the evil characters from the Street Fighter series, the main bad guy.
To arms! There's a battle underway! Hey,
Which
pals.
it's not a really
Murder
big
your world.
amount of content by any means to put a temporary fighting spirit in Smash Brothers Ultimate, but it is an odd indicator that they plan on having more content for Smash Brothers Ultimate when it was kind of assumed that they were just done with it and there wouldn't be anything else added to it, maybe just some bug updates and at most. Here we have Ys 9 Monstrum Nox, which, okay, we'll put that on the follow list and we'll see, although it doesn't even support English. 4949, interesting. This may never support English and have to be taken off the follow list. What's funny here is Ys 9 Monstrum Nox is fairly easy to confuse with the Shin Megami Tensei most recent game. Although visually they look very different. They both have lots of monsters and are JRPGs. And the names are somewhat similar. A little similar. Let's see. Next we have Cat Swap Tiles, which looks like too much of a mobile game for its own good. $1.69 English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Straight Ahead, which looks like it's a Minecraft dropper clone. And then kind of an asset flip game. $2.99. Again, allegedly full audio for English. Here we have a game called Where's Paradise, which is some kind of multiplayer party imposter game. I don't know how you'd really play this, but I do know it's a multiplayer game, so I would never play it. $3.99 English and French full audio, online PvP only. Let's see, next we have Energy Island Corporation, or Energy Island Corp, which looks like garbage. $5.09, English only. Here we have a game called Hidden Frog, which looks bad. 89 cents, English full audio. Yeah, it looks like it's a rocket jump simulator at best. Here we have Lucky Town, spelled with an I, which looks terrible. $4.99, English only. This is one of those sock pop games, isn't it? These are still putting out these sock pop games that are all bad and putting out a bunch of them. Here we have a game called Hidden Map, which looks like nothing. It's a hidden object game. $11.99, several languages. Here we have Impulse Force, which looks terrible. $5.99, English, Portuguese. Here, GameDeveloper.com has an article. I had a little bit of a breakup when I was launching the app because of my network settings, so yeah. There's an article here that says an analyst says Activision Blizzard's purchase could make Xbox the dominant platform eventually. I'm kind of expecting that to be the case.
No one gets past me. Shashing!
Yeah. But the fact that they're saying eventually does point out that they don't feel like that's going to happen overnight. And I also would agree with that. Here we have a game called Legend of the Homebody, which looks like it's a kind of idle clicker game, really, more than anything. Management survival game is what they're calling it. $4.19 English and Chinese. We have about 10 more games that are new, and then we have our standard 5 games on the fall list. Legend of the Chili Tree also doesn't look like anything. $9.99 English only. What's funny is it's already on the following list. So we may have already looked at these games. Legend Bowl looks like an old school football game. Yep, this is also on the following list, so we already looked at them. Legal Dungeon. Why would this be on the follow list? What is going on here? How did all these games end up on the following list? It's a game about organizing police investigation documents. Yeah, I'm going to take that off the following list. I have no idea why that would have even been on the following list. But yeah. Yeah, something weird's happened here where we have several games here that are on the following list and then really shouldn't be. Oh, these are probably fall list cleanup games, and then I launched it again, so I have 2 sets of fall list cleanup. That would make sense. So, yeah, that would explain why these games are kind of on the following list. And it also means I can take a lot of these out. League of Enthusiastic Losers here looks... Should see, it passes the test. It's very positive, and it's not early access, so we can promote that to the wish list. In that case, Later Daters is very positive, but very few reviews. A RPG simulation game of older people dating.
This is merely the beginning.
Okay, I will put that on the wish list, although in all probability I might never get around to actually playing it or buying it.
Too late to run.
Here we have Latarnic's Puzzle, which is a poor choice of name because it gets too close to Latinx, and people are not happy with that phrase, I think, for the most part. See, this came out December, so it's a box pushing Sokoban game. I'll leave it on the fall list. Here we have one from February that has really no relevancy, but I think I'll give it a little bit more time. Then Last Village needs more time as far as reviews. And then we're at GameDeveloper.com's articles. We'll start one more game here and hope we get a quick disconnect. So, yeah, they say there's a report that Bobby Kotick will step down after the acquisitions wrap up. That's what we're hearing. Although very possibly that is literally just one person spreading that rumor. I can't help but feel like a lot of what is said by most mainstream video game journalism is actually rumors that the journalists themselves are making up and ideas that they're pushing. I have no idea who this character is. Like, I don't feel like I've ever seen this character. Laura, Laura. Yeah. Seems like there's oddly just a new character, new skin, and whole card back theme around it. I have wondered if some of these characters are characters that the Japanese version of the game gets early, but I'm not sure that's really the case. Back to news. GameDeveloper.com says Xbox Game Pass has surpassed 25 million subscribers ahead of the Activision Blizzard acquisition. So, trying to tie everything back to the acquisition. 25 million subscribers, and then you spend nearly $70 billion. Like, I'm not sure how that math actually adds up. Like, you have to just hope and assume that you're getting many years of profit, specifically attributable to a $70 billion acquisition. And yeah, I guess at the end of the day, having 25 million subscribers to Xbox Game Pass still shows that they must be making a lot more money from individual game sales if they can afford to acquire companies and still make video games. Or they're just burning money like crazy to acquire new users, to pad out their quarterly reports and valuations, and it's all just a house of cards that's going to collapse, which is also very possible. GameDeveloper.com has GDC, health, safety, and travel Q&A. The FTC is reportedly examining Meta's VR business. That's would Meta being the new name for Facebook. And certainly a lot of the acquisition announcement had talk about the metaverse, which has really just become the new NFT talk in a lot of shareholder presentations, and it's just ridiculous. Like, maybe instead of requiring investors being accredited, we should require investors to be educated so that they aren't pushing ridiculous scams like NFTs. And frankly, the metaverse is such a nebulous term that it is becoming quickly snake oil also. Mythical Games has acquired the cloud streaming developer Polystream. Haven't heard of either company. They made Blanco's Block Party. I've never heard of that. It is based on NFTs. Yeah. Everything's involved around NFTs. Then they have more promotion of GDC. Here are the amazing games to play at the 2022 Alt Control GDC showcase.
Did someone call for a genius?
Which, yeah. It's just kind of promotion for games you could literally only play at that event, and it won't ever see the light of day or be released in mass. Interesting. Even the videos here are not loading. Yeah. Player that Vimeo's server IP could not be found. And yet the YouTube videos can be found.
Deserves a precious death.
Like, one of the things, because of me failing to properly block things, is that a lot of ads have been allowed through. I was blocking maybe 80 to 90% of ads instead of 100% of ads. So theoretically this should work a little bit better now, because I was getting odd ads that felt like they should be blocked and weren't. Not all ads are being blocked anyways, only just a reasonable amount. If you try to block everything, then the internet sometimes just completely breaks on you, as it kind of is now. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com's last article is that the new UK publisher Firestoke wants to reset the developer-publisher relations. I feel like this article has already been talked about or put out there. It would be nice to see a publisher be nicer to its developers. I'll believe it when I really see it. Here we have another game on Steam called The Last Regiment. Let's quickly look at it. It doesn't really feel like my type of game, but it is positive, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it on the wish list. And we have about 10 of these, or it should be exactly 10. Here we have something called Last
Enemy
Message,
or no, you did good.
which definitely looks weird, but it is again very positive. So as a free game, I think that works. Although, why am I even bothering to put a free game on the wish list when I could just put it in my owned category and add it? Last Light has creepy imagery and it's 78% positive. It's not early access, so that passes the test also. Dying Light, whatever the next game was, obviously has been removed from Steam completely. This is what happens when something is completely removed. It just goes back to your main page. Last Labyrinth. Did this game ever come out of early access? I guess it did. It's not very relevant for a game that came out in 2019. They have only 69 things, but it is also a VR game. If anything, this is probably a VR game that should have come out a little bit. Should go on sale a lot, and they should try and create a desire for a lot of new people, new owners of VR games to play it. Historically, though, it's been lowest to $25.49 10 times. It's $29.99. It's particularly expensive for a VR game, and that's a Japanese company for you. Of course, you also have this weird girl that you have to tell to do all the actions because you're like strapped to a wheelchair, and the assumption is that she's some kind of like ghost girl or something. And so yeah, you're just directing them, which really they should just have gotten rid of the pretext of you being strapped to the chair, and it should have just been a third-person perspective where you're controlling the girl directly. There's no need for that contrivance. You can see it gets fairly dangerous as she got her head chopped off there. And clearly it's supposed to be kind of a horror game. They say it's Saw meets Eco. You can see in the shadow there, she has horns on her head. Yeah, since it's a VR game, since it's positive, it stays on the fall list. Last Evil here was the one with nudity and sexual content in it. It's rated very positively. I'm not sure I could ever cover Last Evil, but I will go ahead and quickly put it on the wish list and move on. Laser Zone barely has 30 reviews. And I don't think I see something here I really want to play. It's a avoid the lasers side-scroll platformer for the most part. There is a different thought there, though. English and Korean doesn't really change my opinion one way or the other. Yeah, having to do laser puzzles while the lasers also endanger you, having bosses, having hack and slash elements. It's an interesting mix worth, I think, trying. So I'm going to put that on the wish list, even though it is only slightly over 30. But I've never held anything to a slightly over 30 rule. If you have 30 positive reviews, it should be on the wish list by my rules. Whereas Lasagna Boy here is mixed. And I guess I could give it more time, but I suspect you're not going to pull yourself out from that, which is a shame. I don't really like the greenness of this, but I do kind of like the art style. But yeah, apparently it doesn't work, so Let's just remove it from the follow list and investigate no 4 further. Larger than light needs more time. Languish again is mixed. Same rules, basically. You're not going to pull yourself out of that kind of hole, or you're not likely to. So remove that to the from the follow list. Then Landlord of Woods. Why is this not taking me to the... I don't know why that took me there and somewhere else. Maybe it just randomly clicked on something on accident. This looks weird and creepy, but it's very positive. 99 cents. Yeah, you can definitely tell that this was a page that was having trouble loading. Yep, images weren't loaded, things like that. Okay, well, then we didn't... I learned I need to do some more work on my network. We didn't get that last victory, but I'll try and get that off screen. I need to also start playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And go through a spotlight at the very least. There is guess not really anything else I need to do. Well, actually quite a lot I need to do. Need to do the solo in case Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't work. Need to do the daily quest in case Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't work. Need to get around to playing some Fallout 3. Also need to work on my sleep schedule. I also have something not video game related and YouTube related I have to do tomorrow, so there's a chance I won't actually accomplish anything. I am going down my main Twitter feed just to see if there's any news. I am noticing that like Bethesda is tweeting out Doom related cosmetic packs for Doom Eternal Series 9, Series 11, and Series 12. I didn't even know Doom Eternal had cosmetics in it. Second Dinner listed a job alert for product manager. So they definitely seem like they're still hiring and going forward. The Game Maker tool for making Playdate games apparently is open beta. We'll talk about that on Friday. I don't really want to cover the new news unless it's really important news. And the odds of that. Apparently, Dying Light 2 has 350,000 words, 440,000 lines of dialogue. I guess the question is how much of that is spoken out loud, if all of that's spoken out loud. G4 TV retweeting Frost Curran, which is weird because G4 TV has not been retweeting anybody else that, or at least I haven't seen any of their retweets, so I wonder if there's just a ridiculous amount of comments. No, it doesn't seem like it. They could be deleting comments also. Yeah, I think it probably is better for a channel like G4 TV to not retweet everything every one of their creators has to say and just keep everything on tight control and just better curated than that. I've never seen any other YouTube channel specifically retweet every person on that YouTube show. The closest example I would see of something like that is sometimes Borderlands will retweet the Randy Pitchford tweets that have shift codes in them, but they don't retweet everything Randy Pitchford says for sure. Yeah, I'm hoping everything here is just chronological. I've really gotten down to the point where I am just scrolling down to the very bottom of my Twitter feed because it bottoms out fairly quickly just to make sure I see everything, which probably is not necessary. Yeah, I'd say it's not necessary. I'm seeing tweets here that are 4 or 5 hours ago, and we've only been going 2 hours and 50 minutes. If anything, we still are succeeding at keeping these streams shorter, and I appreciate that. And yeah, I still had no drop frames to the network lag as far as streaming, so that seems to work. Yeah, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.